Okay, here we are, the last video for step one. So we had the very first kind of the computer breakdown, and then now 4 videos associated with step one that go along with the chapter. Remember, college classes in general, the starting point, the basis of the class comes from the textbook. But the textbook gives us a jumping off point to go more in depth, to discuss things like objectivity, proactivity, and today this idea of bias. Right? So it finishes up and then we'll move into step 2. So this one should be probably the shortest of the bunch. I usually say that and they end up going long. But we'll see. There's not a ton to cover. Look, I'm not wearing a hat finally. Let's start with the standard tech time, and there's not much to it. But I want to cover 2 things. As we finish up the step, there's always a quiz associated with that step. So 2 things, the discussion board one more time, and then the quiz as to where it is and how you take it. All right? And that'll end tech time. We'll jump into the material. So here we are, signed into Blackboard, clicking on our class. Under lessons. And the discussion board. Now we've been through kind of how you do this. You click on it, you can copy and paste and answer the questions. And look, I fixed my typo, yay. But I wanted to focus on one specific question. So let me blow this up. Number 6 is an opinion. And I can't say that your opinion's wrong, but answer it, are you media literate, why or why not? Give some thought to that. It's question 5 that I want to focus on a little bit. What is media literacy? You probably don't have a definition in mind. Heck, you may have never even heard the term. But if you remember back to the last video when we were looking at, fact check and keeping politicians honest, media literacy is a big part of our lives now because we're surrounded with social media and we are being bombarded from all sides by good and false information, and we have to figure out a way to filter out the BS. Right? So that's where media literacy comes in. And notice that second part. Need to look it up yet. Get in the habit of noting where you found this definition. Right. So what I would do to answer that is go a search. And you know what's going to come up first? Probably Wikipedia. Now for a short answer like this in a discussion board, I honestly don't mind that you use it. Let's see, let's pick one. What is media literacy? Definition and importance of, study.com. I don't know that much about that website, so saying that it's 100% credible, hard to say, but let's see. It says it as a definition. Media literacy. It involves the ability to access, analyze, evaluate, and create media. So that's a good starting point. And I think we can probably all do the first one, and we can access it, but it's those other pieces, analyze, evaluate, and maybe you're creating it. Look, I'm creating this video. I'm not the greatest, but that's media literacy. So that's not a bad definition. Do a search on your own and see if you find one that maybe you like better, that hits it better. But that's not bad. So there's no harm in copy, and you take it back to your discussion questions, and when you're typing yours out, what is media literacy? So I would plug that in. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm not going to save it, but I'm just going to kind of do just a quick one. I'm going to reply. And say, this would be, I'm going to answer all 6 of those, but number 5, media literacy. Let's see how many typos I get. I'm a terrible typer. Do the 2-finger hunt and peck. Paste. Okay. Not a bad answer. Now that's only a piece of that answer, but what I want you guys to get in the habit of doing, and that's why I bring this up, is at the end, in parentheses, it's kind of a quasi-citation method. What I want to see is, okay, where'd you get the info? Not that I'm going to look it up or say that you plagiarized, but just so you get in the habit of. And you can just use a shorthand version because this isn't an academic paper, it's just a discussion board. So I would put in there study.com. That's what I'm looking for. So don't make it overly complicated, but I like to get in the habit of, if I'm using somebody else's ideas or information, give credit to that person. Okay? In this case, it's a website, and if you notice, there's no specific author listed. Oh, look, Anna Marie Orr. She's the one that put this together, so even better. Oops, wrong one. Now I know who wrote it and where I could find it, because I may go, you know what? I like that definition. That's part of why we cite and reference, is so people can find. If they find something provocative in something you write, they may want to look it up for themselves. Okay? That was my point. Kill that. Let's make this not quite so big. I made it uber. And the last thing I want to cover in tech time, I know what it is, so I don't have to go back to the slides. At the end of each week, each step, there's going to be a quiz. Okay, so I want to just kind of touch base. You may have trouble with this. If you do, let me know. There's various ways of getting a hold of me. Quiz 1. Notice you can see on my side, you won't see this from your end, it'll just show up. And remember, I'll make the quizzes available probably midweek, so that if you've gotten all the work done, you're ahead of the curve, and you want to take the quiz, do it. And that allows you to take a couple days. Maybe you got to focus on another class. Remember that time management piece. But once this becomes available, you'll see this link. It'll look just like this. You'd say quiz 1. It'll give you the instructions. Taken online, no later than, right? And started before 11:59 because you want to have time to do it. Test time limit's an hour. That's more than enough. And it's saved and submitted automatically. Either when you do it, I'm finished after 20 minutes, submit, or when the time runs out, it submits, right? And look, if something happens, I've had this happen before. If your computer crashes right in the middle, one, I can see on my end your answers. And what I'll see if your computer crashed is no answer given. So if I see you answered 1, 2, 3, 4, it's looking good, and all of a sudden everything else says no answer given, and you got like a 20% on the quiz, one, I can determine from that your computer probably crapped out. But let me know, because there's ways that I can fix that on my end and let you finish it up. Okay, so I don't want technology to get in the way. Right? So you go through that. When you're ready, you hit begin, and it'll again kind of reiterate, and there's a countdown clock that'll pop up so you kind of know where the time is. And it's all one page, so you're just going to scroll down, but it'll be question 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm going to make it blurry. But you can see that multiple choice, there's little circles. You click it in. True and false. Click on true or false. And at the end, there's a two, they look like they say essay, but they're really short answer. Couple sentences. Just make sure you answer all of it. And we're going to talk about test taking in this video, since it kind of leads into taking the quiz. So it's all online. When you're done, you hit save and submit. And that's it. And I'll get it on my end. I'll grade it. And if you get the answers right, wrong, whatever, you'll see those in the feedback when it comes back to you. Okay? It's pretty simple. After you do it once, you'll be like, boy, this is a breeze. Remember, open book, 1 hour. Midterm and final, longer tests, 2 hours. Plenty of time to do them. So, that's it. No more tech time. Yay. That helps speed up the process, doesn't it? Words of the day. Kind of finishing up. Again, this idea of objective, subjective. I mentioned it in one of the previous videos that all of us have a bias. We lean one way or the other on information. You can think about political bias. I either lean Democrat or Republican. Me personally, just to let you know, I'm an independent because, as I said last video, I'm an equal opportunity offender. I want the best candidate. In a lot of respects, I don't care what party they're in. And I voted for some of the oddball parties out there because I'm getting more and more disheartened with the two big Democrats and Republican parties. They seem more interested in power than doing what's right for their constituents. Uh-oh, rant. Let's just hit the words of the day. An inclination of personality or outlook, how we view the world. And every one of us views it a little bit differently because of our background. Nothing wrong with that. Personal and sometimes unreasoned judgment. That's where bias starts to become a little darker. That I don't look for facts. In fact, I don't care what the facts are. Don't confuse me with the facts. I know what the truth is. And that's part of the problem. Here it is, rant warning with 24-hour news. Is it's not so much about giving you information and perhaps presenting both sides of an argument. Oftentimes what people do is they'll go to CNN or Fox, not to be informed, but to hear somebody say what they think on the news, to reinforce their biases. Because look, both are biased. Fox is biased to the conservative side, CNN more to the liberal side. Right? And if you think back, if you watched any of the 24-hour newses, it depends which channel. You pick Fox. When President Trump was in office, he was held up on a pedestal. And if you went over to CNN, he was like reincarnation of the devil. And now that it's changed, Biden. Now I will say CNN's been hammering him on Afghanistan, but they're still very more in his court, and Fox is very much not, right? And so that's a bias. And the truth is always somewhere in the middle. That wasn't too bad of a rant. Now there's two types of people that kind of come out of this bias. There's one, it's called a skeptic. And you may have heard that, right? Hey, don't be so skeptical. Now, when I throw up the definition, first in class I would ask you, does that sound like a positive or a negative trait? Most of the time people say negative. Don't be so skeptical. Let me see if I can change your mind, or at least think about this. Here's what a skeptic is, the definition of from the Free Dictionary. Inclined to question or doubt accepted answers and opinions. A questioning attitude. That to me, short, sweet, to the point. So a skeptic would go, this stuff about taking whatever it is, pig deworming medicine for COVID, that sounds like BS. And instead of just blindly accepting it, I'm going to dig into it. And it won't take long to show that, yes, in fact, it's BS. So having a questioning attitude, to me, that's always been a positive. But in the world of social media, I think it's even more important that you look at it and you go, yeah, I'm not sure. If it's important to you, then do some digging. And guess what? That takes time. And it makes finding the truth, the objective answer, more difficult. You guys have a much harder time than I did when I was in my teens and 20s because we didn't have quite so many. Now, did we get biased opinions? Sure. But when I watched the news and there was a guy named Walter Cronkite, who I'm going to have a video of somewhere down the road, I trusted him because he was objective and he didn't make his opinion into fact. If he was going to give you his opinion, he told you it was his opinion. But he was well respected. He was a journalist. He wasn't an entertainer. So I think it's a positive trait. Now we can go too far, and that's where we get the next term. It's kind of a next personality trait, and that's the cynic. Oh, don't be so cynical. And if you hear someone say, don't be a skeptic, don't be a cynic, you might say those are the same things, but they're not. Cynic takes it to another level. People believe that folks are motivated by self-interest, that they're not ethical, that they're not moral. Okay? And you start to see more and more of that. Unethical behavior is rampant in our culture. And this idea, I alone can fix it. I'll let you figure out who said that, but that's ridiculous. Nobody knows everything. Remember, I said that in one of the first videos. As soon as you stop learning, you're a fool. So that's where the cynic can become poisonous. And look, I'll be honest with you. This is better done in person. I find myself, you've seen a picture, and it'll be, I think in one of the upcoming week 2, or step 2 rather, videos. The idea of a glass, and you see it's half full of water. Is it half full or half empty? And the way you look at it, it's the same as far as the level of the water, but how your attitude affects that. Whereas the cynic would be more, it's half empty. The person with a more positive attitude, probably half full. I have to fight hard at my age this idea of cynicism, of looking at things and just seeing the bad side of it. I have to work hard at that, just being honest. And I think cynicism obviously is a negative trait. So those are your words of the day. All right, a couple quotes. I put these in backwards. I'm not sure why. If you want to achieve excellence in big things, you have to develop a habit in little things. It kind of goes to that quote by Collier, that everything you do, those little steps get you to your destination, to your goal. Excellence isn't the exception. I can't just decide, well, I'm going to do an excellent job on this big project if I didn't prepare for it step by step getting there. And that comes from Colin Powell, 4-star general, one of the commanders in Desert Storm. He was also the Secretary of State at one point, and I think that's an excellent quote. Remember, I said we are what we do. We are the decisions we make. Excellence isn't just one act, it's a habit. Fail to fail to prepare to fail. It's that habit pattern. And when we get into how the brain works in the next step, you'll see why habits are so powerful. We have good habits, we have bad habits. They're hard to break. Good habits are hard to establish. Aristotle was one of the big 3, the ancient Greek philosophers. Right? Socrates, whose student was Plato, whose student was Aristotle. There you go. Self-aggrandizing. We are the choices we make. Absolutely. I've said that before. So make the choices the most informed, best, most objective decisions you can, because they're going to lead us down the path of life. So this idea of proactive, reactive, let's revisit that. So in a sense, a little bit of a review, but how you speak about things, how you think about things. Remember I said if you go into math and you're terrible at it, like I am, and you go, man, I hate math, this class is going to suck, and I'm probably going to fail. You probably are right. I'm not very good at math. I'm going to do my best in this class, and I'm going to give it 100% effort to pass. You probably will. I'm sorry, I choose to. Those are proactive. You're putting the onus, the emphasis on you and what you can do about things, as opposed to blaming other people. I'll get this done. Look, if you promise somebody something, by God, do it. And if something gets in the way, let them know. There's nothing, well, not nothing, but one of my many pet peeves is people that overpromise and underdeliver or don't deliver. They tell me they're going to do something and they don't do it. You start to lose faith in them, right? Once trust is broken, it's almost impossible to rebuild. And if you can, it takes forever. Whereas reactive, and I can't, it's not my fault. It's their fault, right? Somebody blames somebody else. We have to. The boss said. You know what? Middle managers use that a lot. Did the boss say that? Probably not. He's trying to force you to do something. Maybe that's part of his job. There's nothing we can do about it. Every once in a while, maybe that's true, but often there's not. And if you're proactive and you have a plan B, there is something you can do about it. We can try this. And I've thought about it ahead of time. So it's not a disaster. So a little bit in the way of review and just some of the verbiage that goes with it. All right, let's talk about one of the more collegial kind of big brain concepts here. The idea, it's called locus of control. It's where control of your life resides. That's what locus is. It's a mathematical term, actually, like the center of a circle. So who's in charge? Who's in charge of my life and what I do? And that's what they get at. And one of the old textbooks we had used the idea of a fighter pilot being totally in control. And I think that's wrong. Having kind of been there, done that. Yes, I'm in control of that aircraft, but I don't know what the enemy's doing. I don't know what the anti-aircraft's doing. The fuel state changes. Maybe I don't feel so good that day, so I can't pull a lot of G's. There's still a lot of variables. I control much, but not all of my environment. What's the weather like? What's the temperature? That has a whole lot to do with performance. Okay? So that's the idea. Who's in charge? And if I ask before I even throw up any of these bullets, what do you want it to be? Do you want to be in charge of your life as much as possible, you personally, or do you want to leave control to other people or other things? I think the answer is obvious, that we want to control as much as we can. Look, everybody on the planet has a boss. I don't care who you are. There's always somebody above you. But to control as much as possible is the goal. So internal locus of control. I'm in charge of as much as I can be in charge of. And maybe if I'm not, at least I can influence. Whereas external, this is not rocket science. It's outside. It's someone or something else. So who or what is in control? And if you look at the pictures, I explained the F-16, the fighter plane. But look, the second picture. Do I give control of my life to the internet? And it's easy to think of this as some form of addiction, and that's the bottom picture, right? Cocaine on the mirror. If, and you guys, look, I was a smoker for a big part of my life. And at about the 50-minute mark, the nicotine low light would go on and you'd get kind of jittery and it was time to step out and have a smoke break. I'd given part of the control of my life to nicotine, to smoking, and that was in control. Okay? And it's a hard habit to break, because not only is it a habit, that fixation with puffing on a cigarette, it's addictive. The chemical's addictive. So what about procrastination, distraction? Who's in charge of those things? We talked about procrastination being the number one common error, common fault students have. You are. You can control it. I don't feel like doing it. I'd rather, drink a beer and watch Family Guy than do this stupid breaky worksheet, but I need to knock it out. Get that done. Now go watch Family Guy. So you control those things. And distraction, again, putting this somewhere else for the times you need to focus, this bloody phone, eliminate those distractions. It wastes time and it takes away the focus you had, and now you have to come back to it and try to figure out, where was I? What was I talking about? Right? That makes it more difficult. So just think about, give me some other examples. External, internal, locus of control. Somewhere down the road here, we're going to talk about motivation that goes with that. Intrinsic, extrinsic. Motivation that comes from within, motivation that comes from outside. So these two, that's why I introduced this as the first part. Internal, external, I think that's pretty easy. Intrinsic, extrinsic, when we get to those, just remember, internal, external. So what about addiction? Again, better in the classroom, but the idea of, do you think the internet is an addiction? If you have kids, you would probably argue yes, that gaming, right, or just surfing the web or whatever it is an addiction. If you look at the American Medical Association, they have now defined internet addiction as a thing through research, through data, through objective research. So yes, it's out there and you can see it, and you may have it. Can't put the phone down. Check your phone 100 times a day. Got to keep checking emails. That fear of missing out. The world will keep spinning without you looking at Facebook every 10 minutes. So I stole a cartoon, right? Hope I don't get a copyright violation. I just like this one. Mind if I strap the phone to my forehead so I can pretend you're looking at me? Guilty. Done that. You go to a restaurant and you see people. My wife and I went out to eat this last weekend, and there were some younger folks, like a date type, sitting across the table from each other, both in their phones. Now, they might have been looking something up, that they're both, we want to buy a kayak, so let's look up, what's the best one. But oftentimes it seems like they're more into the phone than the person right across from them. Okay, GNTC library. So I lied, a little bit of tech time. Let me go, we'll step through this quickly, and then bear with me here. I'm going to jump ahead. Yep, and then we'll finish up with test taking skills. Okay, Let me leave those bullets up so you can just look at them for a second. World at your fingertips, but our library is used meagerly, not much at all. There's a lot of databases out there, a lot of places to look for information. And I just put a couple here up on the screen. EBSCOhost, I use that a lot in my dissertation. ProCon is a website that takes an issue. Let's say legalizing marijuana. And what it'll do is get information on both sides of the argument, because there are pros and there are cons. And if you hear somebody that's only pro, guess what? They're biased. You know, Stoner Joe's like, you legalize weed everywhere. But there's some very big downsides, right? Especially to young developing brains, if nothing else. So that's interesting. And what happens is, we'll step through this, I hope it works well, but you've done it before, even through Google. You do a search on legalizing marijuana. What you're going to get is probably a million hits, a million hits. See what I did there? A million results. So what you want to do is refine that search criteria. Legalizing medical marijuana in the state of Georgia. That's a much more finite search. It'll give you a lot less to look at. But you're still probably going to have thousands. So that's kind of what I want to step through. And we'll do this again. This is going to be rather brief, but the idea of how to search and how to refine that search. And that last bullet, the abstract is your friend. Remember, syllabus is a guide. We use these wacky terms. Look, abstract is a summary. And instead of reading a 17-page article and go, nope, that's not what I need, and waste an hour, you read the one-paragraph abstract and you go, nope, that's not what I need, or you go, boy, that's exactly what I need. And you do that in 2 or 3 minutes. Okay, so let's do that. Man, I'm going to go over 30 minutes. I said it was going to be short. I lied. Got too many things open. Dun, 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 dun. Let's do this. Back to the home page. My resources library. Okay, there's research guides, the databases A to Z. There's some other things, and we'll come back to a little bit more specifics on this. This again is just kind of an introductory piece. The actual library hours, there are physical libraries at the various campuses. Let's see. Let's just pick one. That's one of my other mutts. Here, let me pause for a second. She's going to keep yapping. Right. We'll see if they've stopped barking. The mailman's making his run. Okay. Let me show you a couple things. The Britannica is not bad, but two of the more used, Britannica Online, I use it occasionally. Here's one. It's called ProQuest. That has a lot of information. But let me pull up one that you're probably going to use, and in fact, it's linked from our home page. It's called Galileo. And so I don't see that on here. Well, just go up, resources and guides, and it's got all that, the same thing we were looking at before, but let's go to the Galileo homepage just to show you what it looks like. And guess what? Galileo is run by that EBSCOhost company. So I've already got it open. I just want to show you the homepage. And this is where you would type in whatever it is you want to look up. Legalizing marijuana. I already did it. And look what you get. Remember I was talking about, millions of, this is a little exaggerated, but there's 40,000 results on legalization of marijuana. Holy moly, you want to read all those? Good luck. So that's where you would go back in, and let's refine that and do it just kind of how we were talking about. Legalizing medical. And EBSCOhost is good. See how it kind of auto-fills? It's thinking, hey, this is maybe what you're looking for in Georgia. So we got 40,825. It's thinking because it's going through a lot of information. Now we're down to 2,400. Still big, but boy, did that knock a lot out of the way. And so a couple other things you can do. Peer reviewed. We'll talk more about that, but that means somebody with a big brain looked at it and said, this is worth it. It's not some Facebook nonsense. Full text if you want the entire book. So that's a good one. I got pretty good internet, so you can tell there's a lot of computer brain power going on behind the scenes here. It didn't knock out too many, still 2,300. Peer-reviewed journal articles, the really good stuff. New do a little song and dance. Okay, down to 417. So you can see how we went from what, 40,000 to 417. Still too high. I'm not going to read all of these. Still too high. See what I did there? But here's another thing you can do. See this? There's a publication date range. So back in 1988, maybe not super interested. I'm more interested in, maybe the last 2 or 3 years. What's going on in the legislature about legalizing marijuana. So let's type in 2020 to 2021. Look at that, I'm down to 20. That's more doable. If I was going to write a short research paper on, what's been going on in Georgia in the last couple of years, reference medical marijuana, very specific search. And let's do one more thing, okay? I'm just going to pick one of these articles because I want to show you that last bullet. I can read the whole thing, 43 pages worth, or looky there. It's a little longer. It's a pretty long paragraph, but there's your abstract. I can read that in a few minutes and go, boy, that's exactly what I was looking for. You go, nope, or maybe just a maybe. And you can save these. You can save them, come back and look at them later, right? But that's beyond the scope of what I want to talk about. So, yeah, that added a few minutes, but the library, Galileo, searches, abstracts. This will become more and more useful as you go through school. Okay? And we'll hit it again. Here's one other, just FYI. There is a Google search function that's not bad called Google Scholar, and it goes out and looks at those peer-reviewed journal articles as well. So that's a source where you can get information. And it's pretty good. Right? It's not so much based on paying them ad dollars. Okay, let me say one more thing about politics. See, the mailman's going back the other way. One of the things you're going to see down the road is a question about, hey, my vote doesn't matter. Does it or doesn't it? And I just use this. There was an election not that long ago in Virginia where it was a tie for the Virginia House. And they recounted it 3 or 4 or 5 times, and it came out a dead heat every time. So per the Virginia Constitution for the state, the result was the name picked out of a hat. So when you say my vote doesn't matter, you never know. No, excuse me. The 2000 presidential election came down to several hundred votes in the state of Florida. You know what? It matters to you. So I said it last class, I'll never tell you who to vote for. Register, vote. Be part of the process and be an informed voter. Look up what the candidates are really saying and doing. Okay, let's finish up with test taking so I can get done at least under 40 minutes. Test taking 101. The best way to take a test or a quiz is to relax, and the best way to be relaxed is to be prepared. Now again, open book tends to make people relax too much. I'll just look it up. But if you have a finite amount of time, which almost all open book tests do, you want to be able to knock out those questions I know so I can look up the 2 or 3 or 4 that I'm not sure of. And you'll do better on the test. So prepare, look over stuff. So what to look at? Notes, bolded words, words of the day, some of the key items from the chapter and the videos. I wouldn't go back and review for a quiz and watch all the videos again, What I might do is call up the slides and look at those words of the day and just refresh my memory, maybe jot down a note on what those are, and have your notepad sitting on your desk while you're taking that online quiz. As we take the quizzes, what you'll see is the quiz and test folder starts to fill up. So when you go, it's time for midterm test, go back and look over quiz 1, 2, and 3 to help refresh your memory. Not to memorize the answers, but those, if there's a question about it, that means it was a key concept. That'll help refresh your memory. Okay? The better thing to do, especially for the bigger tests like the final, 45, 50 minutes, take a break. Come back, do some more. Cramming for 6 hours, it's like if you've ever read a book and you've read the same paragraph over and over because you're a little bit tired. It's because it's just bouncing off your brain. Same thing with trying to cram for 6 hours. Eventually the stuff's just going to fall out your other ear. So do it in short spells. This is an acronym that comes from the military. It's sort of profane. I'll use an abbreviated version. But it means when you're taking a test, make sure you RTFQ. Read the frickin' question. Make sure you know what it's asking. And especially on a multiple choice, read the question, read all the possible responses. So read the frickin' question. What is being asked? And then answer it. Answer the frickin' question. Don't overanalyze. I see students do that sometimes. They'll answer it. Usually your first instinct is correct. And they'll sit and stew on it for a while and then they'll change their answer. You've done it. You change it to the wrong answer. And watch gross overgeneralizations. Nobody votes because everybody thinks it's a waste of time. One, that's BS. And two, all I need is one example to refute it. So some people don't vote. Yeah, we got a visitor again. Hello, Demi. A few people don't. I wouldn't even say many. Maybe. It depends on the election. So watch those. All right, some general ideas. On a bigger test, scan it. How many questions do I have? These online ones, not so difficult. Are there a bunch of essays? Maybe I should answer those first. Maybe I shouldn't. But I would, if I come to a question I don't know, I'll skip it. On a paper copy test, I'll make a mark next to it so I come back to it. And sometimes what you'll find is as you go in and read the test, all of a sudden you'll get a hint on another question. You go, oh yeah, and you go back and answer the one you were unsure of. Predicting, if you have acronyms, there's one mathematically, right? PEMDAS, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. It helps you remember how to go through the solving of an equation. Right? And there's some other ones, HOMES. HOMES. It's an acronym for the name of all the Great Lakes, Huron, Ontario, Michigan, Erie, Superior. So I don't have to remember those. If I remember HOMES, it kind of keys my memory. Now I can get it. I already said look for answers later in the test. And then go back and make sure you didn't skip one. I think our online test may give you a warning. Hey, you didn't answer this one. It may not. And it counts a no answer as a wrong answer. So go back, look through it one more time, make sure you've filled in all the answers. Now to specifics. This can help you if you're stumped. If you know the answer cold, answer it. But on true-false questions, look for negative wording, non, not, things like that. This is not, and especially look for that in this form, double negatives. So I use this, you will not be unprepared if you study for the test. I hate double negatives because what does that really mean? It means you will be prepared if you study for the test. So watch for those. They kind of cancel each other out, but they can be confusing. Look for these, always, never. Those are typically false because, again, all I need is one example to make that statement false. The colonial army was always victorious against the British. That's super false. They weren't victorious hardly at all till the end. If you see these, though, it typically means it's true. Usually, many, generally, some, because that's a less finite. It's not everyone. One part's false, yep. Assume true. I'll tell you this is a little bit of inside info. It's much harder, at least for me, to write a test or a quiz with a false. As it always feels like you're kind of being tricky. So do you assume true? Again, if I'm completely stumped, I would probably guess true. On multiple choice, a couple things you can do. One is, eliminate some of the, if there's like a comical answer, get rid of that one. Try to narrow it down to maybe two best answers. Yeah, you can look at them that way. Each is a true or false. And then I hear this a lot. Well, if I don't know, I'll just pick C. I got a better solution. If you don't know, look for the longest answer, because the instructor probably, if they're like me, I try to write the perfect answer that fits, because I don't try to trick students. So look for that longest answer. It's not, C is kind of random. Longest answer is a much better piece. Mention that. This is just a gaffe, but once upon a time teaching history at Dalton State, I'm giving the final exam. It's a class of like 50 students. It's big. And from the background, I don't know if you, what the heck is that? And I keep hearing it. So I go walking back to the very back row of the class, and there's a guy back there with his hand up, and he goes, and he whacks his hand on the desk. I go, dude, what are you doing? He said, well, I don't know the answer, so I whack all 4 fingers, and whichever one's tingling the most is the right answer. You probably don't want to go down that road. I find it kind of humorous. If you have a matching, at least look for, the ones you know, and if the person in column A, like, let's say President Jimmy Carter, that wouldn't match with a mineral, right? So match person, place, thing. Those should come together. That can help a little bit. And it's sort of a process of elimination. So Jimmy Carter probably wouldn't match a place. And the last one, people are so, essay questions. I hate them. Well, I look at them in a positive way. And even short answers. You can get partial credit if you know some of it. And you can, if you're pretty good at kind of BSing your way through, if you know some of it, you might be able to extract enough where you get most of the credit. Okay? So don't leave them blank. You should know some of the ideas. And look for these key words. Describe, tell me about. Compare, what are the similarities between the two? Contrast, what are the differences between the two? And then summarize, kind of sum up, what am I talking about here? Quick outline. Let me show you an example. It'll make more sense. But I would underline the required parts on a paper test. So here's an example. This comes from my history class. Look at that. Name one issue that limited the growth of American cities at the turn of the last century, and how was this overcome? That is a 2-part question. Name one of the issues, and then tell me how it was overcome. The cities were getting so crowded there wasn't any space, so we started building up with skyscrapers. Okay? 2-part answer. This one has 3. Who was the forgotten man? And then tell me one social and one event, specific event that occurred during the Great Depression. That's what I'm getting at with, on those essays. Make sure you RTFQ, how many parts, and ATFQ. Answer all 2 or 3 parts in this case. Okay? Look at that. Oof, longer than I thought it would be, but hopefully that's good test-taking information, prepping you for the quiz, and that'll be useful throughout. So that finishes up Week 2, Step 1. Now it's quiz time for you guys. Again, if you have problems accessing or something happens during the quiz, please just let me know and we'll see if we can't fix that. And look, we're done with the first step. There's only 6 of them, so we're a big chunk of the way through the first part of this class. So yes, it's busy. B terms always are because there's a lot going on. But hang in there. You can do it. And I'll see you as we get into Step 2.